I do have some personal reasons for posting this. It will certainly be a long post, but copying and pasting it will not give you the brightest teeth for which you might wish, nor will they be cursed with permanent coffee stains if you do not. If you're interested enough to take the time, though, there's a possibility that you'll learn something. Imagine, I'm sure some remember, being bullied in school. Little things, a drink spilled on you or tripping accidentally. Not on purpose, of course, in the hall. Think of these things happening at home, too. But the oddity of it is that you can never identify the bully. Everywhere you go, you're nudged, bumped, and tripped. Yet never once can you get the slightest glimpse of your tormentor. Every day, everywhere, and no matter how hard you look, you have nothing, no one against whom you can fight back. Graduation eventually relieves you from the difficulties of high school, but the bully just follows you. In fact, he grows bolder. You're nudged and bumped so often that it's hard to eat and drink. You begin to find yourself wincing as you move around, constantly expecting the next jerk of your body, and in spite of the vigilance, you miss the assault. All you know about it is that you awaken bloody, beaten, and so sore and tired that you can barely lift your arms. You soon find out that this isn't going to be an isolated incident, and over the next few months, normal consists of near constant small nudges and bumps, punctuated by the occasional savage beating. You aren't a fool. You actually went to the first doctor looking for this bully when you know it's actually inside of you more than 2 years earlier. What you have gotten for the effort is absolutely nothing. When the twitches and headaches began, you knew exactly as much about their cause as you do now, but with the new assault, a doctor proposes some long-term testing, and you eventually get a name for the demon which has followed you. Your problem is epilepsy. It's such a relief to finally put a name to the torment that you're experiencing. Your new doctor proposes treatment options, and you begin drug therapy. Regular visits to the doctor for testing and blood level monitoring gradually brings the nudges and bumping under control. The beatings continue, however. They're reduced to a few times a year rather than a few per month. You really begin to feel that you can live with this. You move through the next few years with a bit more confidence than you had felt for some time before. Those beatings, tonic-clonic seizures actually, continue to be a bother though. As your bully has ever done, they come without warning. They aren't so frequent, but you still find yourself in odd places and odd times. Beaten, bloody, and sore. The few people unfortunate enough to observe one of these attacks have some understanding of your problem, but many others are completely dismissive, even going so far as to jokingly ask if you are in a bar fight when they see you with your lips and mouth cut and bloody and your bruised face. They don't understand why, for as much as 2 or 3 days after these, your thinking is confused and you don't get around very well. You're just lazy and unmotivated. It's hard to blame these people, even in your own mind, because while you know the name of your problem, you don't really understand it yourself. There is no identifiable cause of the disorder, so you don't have any idea why this happens. You don't know why, since there are treatments that are available, they don't really control the problem. This confusion grows more profound as the seizures begin to worsen again. Medicines are changed. Dosages of them are increased and decreased experimentally, and still the problem worsens. The nudges, jerks, and bumps, myoclonic seizures start to come back. You stare helplessly into space more often, just daydreaming for observers, but actually absent seizures. And for those few seconds, you're screaming inside your head to move. Partial onset seizures leave you dazed and disoriented for minutes at a time, even as you move through your day. Worse yet, the tonic-clonic seizures become more frequent and more violent, instilling a constant terror into every moment, just waiting for the next attack. For 3 years, this goes on, and you are so tired you can barely keep putting one foot in front of the other. In years to come, you actually find that even your memories of this time period are blurred and indistinct. A rather large and quite significant portion of your life is missing from your mind. It may as well have never existed to you. At the time you are living, however, you are thankful to find a new doctor and a new cocktail of medication which begins to control your difficulties. Seizure-free! For the first time, perhaps ever, but certainly since you were a child. You make it through a year without a single episode. No bumps, no staring, disorientation, or beatings. As the second year passes, you begin to feel almost free for the first time. It's a feeling of freedom so profound that for the first time you actually begin to realize just how utterly horrible you must have felt, and the recovery of yourself is amazing. Living life without fear is perhaps the most wonderful thing you can imagine. One day you're at work, underneath a house, when the bully catches up with you again, and he isn't gentle. Your helper hears noises he can't really define. It's the sound of you smashing your face against the underside of the house, and he can't get to you in time to help. Still in the posticle, after the convulsive stage, but still completely unaware stage of the seizure, you crawl out from under the house, go inside the house, and proceed to have another tonic-clonic on the floor in front of the people for whom you are working. Your helper manages to get you home, however you can't remember it all, where you have yet another seizure. At this point an ambulance is called, still posticle. You refuse to be transported and run the EMTs out of your house, with some choice words, as it's later described to you. A couple hours later, you come to so bloody, bruised, and dazed that you realize you probably need medical attention and get someone to take you to the hospital. You do remember this. You remember getting to the ER, and you remember being taken straight back, but very shortly after, you lose it all again, because you have yet another seizure. This pattern of long-duration, repeated seizures is called status epilepticus, and is one of the most common ways people die from epilepsy, either as a direct result of the seizures or from injuries received during them. In the AR, they drug you down from this state. Valium and Ativan are the most common drugs for this, and the next memory you have is waking up in a hospital room. It's a bit confusing, but as you begin to recall being brought to the ER, it comes to make much sense as anything about this wretched condition does. It isn't all that long before a nurse comes in, and shortly after a doctor comes in and explains that not only did you have a string of seizures, but your blood sugar in the ER was over 600. This is, as the doctor explains, likely both cause and effect, since high blood sugar can trigger seizures, and seizures can cause blood sugar to increase. Appointments are scheduled, advice given, papers signed, and you are eventually released on your own recognizance. You spend the next 2 years struggling with this latest manifestation. You find that you are in fact diabetic, and while you have a genetic predisposition for the disease, it is strongly suspected that years of swallowing AEDs, anti-epileptic drugs, has contributed to its development by continually damaging your organs. Regardless of what caused the problem, you learn to keep the blood sugar under control, and you find a new mix of AEDs which again control the seizures. Life is good. It doesn't last. You come home from work one evening, shower, and leave to get the kids from the babysitter. You wake up the following morning, hurting and weak, with vague memories of emergency personnel and medical people. As it turns out, you've had a seizure while driving to get your kids and slammed headfirst into a tree near the road. The tree itself wound up roughly in the location of the vehicle's steering wheel, with the intervening parts pushed back accordingly. You look at the van and wonder how you even survived. But the fact is that you don't feel any worse, not at all, than you do following any previous tonic-clonic seizure. All you can do is stare in a stunned amazement. At this point, you almost stop living. You can't drive, you can't work, and you realize that perhaps you shouldn't have been doing so for a long time. Your doctor disappears, died actually, but you don't know it at the time. You spend quite a while looking for a new one, and through it all the seizures just keep coming. Eventually, you do find a new one, the best one you've had. You are evaluated for surgeries and determined to be ineligible. Your seizure types and condition are unlikely to be controlled by any of them. The chemical experimentation begins all over again. You feel very much like a junior high science fair project. But eventually you find a winning combination. Again. About 3.5 years you go seizure-free. Only the tiniest of myoclonics coming in frequently. It's good, and you're grateful, very much so, for the reprieve, but you can't relax. Too many times you've stilled the beast only to find that it refuses to lie quietly, and eventually, as it has ever been, it rises again. You awaken one morning sore, tired, and weak, with your wife looking at you and asking, "Are you okay?" and continuing with, "You've had a seizure." If you have troubled yourself to read this far, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing so. You have probably figured out that you have graciously consented to briefly imagine your way through my personal experience with epilepsy. I don't like to talk about this at all, and it has been very hard writing it. The seizure ending the paragraph above occurred October 30th, 2015, And now, 3 years later, I've yet to achieve solid control again. I take each step, each moment of every day, wondering when the next one will come, knowing by now with absolute certainty that it will. I force myself to write this because roughly 50,000 people in the United States die each year from epileptic complications. These deaths aren't recorded in the same way cancer deaths, violent deaths, or auto accident deaths are, because most of them are ruled as accidental, with little notice that the accident occurred due to a seizure. I have forced myself to write this because suicide rates among epileptics are 4 to 6 times the rate of the general population in this country. I not only understand that number, I often wonder why it's that low, because death is the only way this ends. I have forced myself to write this because for epilepsy there is no cure, no remission, not even a day off. If you survive with epilepsy, it's because you fight it every moment of every day with each breath that you take. I could say much more. I'll leave you with only one little story. With the internet providing easy communication among distant people, epileptics have become a pretty tight-knit community. We support one another because we are only 8% of the world population, and we are the only people who have much serious understanding of what we endure. 2 years ago, I met a person in one of our support groups who lives here in the U.S. He needs a lot of support from as many of us as can, because half of his face is burned off. His family tried to cure his epilepsy with an exorcism. That is where epileptics stand in the 21st century. November is Epilepsy Awareness Month. You can follow me on social media, where you'll find posts of all my art. Any of my finished pieces are uploaded to DeviantArt, and I post works in progress as well as daily month-long challenges works on Twitter. If you like my style and want a piece of your own, I do commissions on DeviantArt and have a Zazzle shop. Links in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment. I would love to read what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.